What's up, everybody? This is another episode of the Reuben Show. This is episode 3. We are filming on location here. We are at a Petro in Arizona, and here we go. Let's jump right into it. Episode 3. These are getting hard to do, right? Because I'm working and we're kind of on the road here, right? So this is kind of like the light setup. I have a different kind of setups. I have all this stuff so I could try to just be adaptable to everything, right? So anyways, so this episode is going to be pretty much about sports. I'm going to do another episode in a little bit here, but this is going to be all sports centric. So for you sport nerds, let's get into the weeds here, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is, and you're probably going to see in the video, because there's going to be the audio component to this, but in the video, in the YouTube video, you're going to see footage that I took of the Super Bowl. The Los Angeles Rams win the Super Bowl in Los Angeles, basically, right? Which is kind of weird. It's interesting because of the fact that it's very difficult to do where you win the Super Bowl when your city is hosting it. So this is the way that it should have happened. Before COVID happened, the Rams Stadium was supposed to, I think, host a Super Bowl a year or two ago. And so that never happened because the amount of people that can be in there was all this holdup. It just wasn't the right time. The season was kind of short and delayed. Attendance was down. It was all kind of weird, right? So that being said, everything kind of started to fall. All the chips started to line up, right? So you had Odell Beckham Jr. went to the Rams. You had Cooper Kupp, this wide receiver, having this amazing MVP season. Almost broke the record for receptions and total yards in a season. Didn't get there, but he got close, right? Very, very hard what he did. Is just a consistent player. Was he one of the biggest reasons why the Rams won the Super Bowl? Absolutely, right? He's a big reason. Stafford coming over from Detroit, he was instrumental. They got rid of Jared Goff. They traded him to the Detroit Lions, and everybody thought that he was like the golden child. Everybody thought he was the man, right? So anyways, so they win the Super Bowl. I go to the parade. I'm like, I'm going to go to the parade. I didn't go to the Lakers parade because there was no Lakers parade. I didn't go to the Dodgers parade because of COVID. I didn't do any of that stuff, right? So I said, when the Dodgers won the World Series, I went to Whittier Boulevard where it was just crazy mayhem. I have footage of that. There's a YouTube video of that somewhere. But anyways, but I said, I'm going to go to the Rams parade if they have one. And it just so happens I was on vacation. I went there. So to get there, I was in Orange County. I was staying in Orange County. And to get there, here was the deal. I was like going to Uber it. I was going to drive. What was the best way? Stay at a friend's house to get close to proximity. All those 3 things were an option, right? So then I was looking at it, and the Uber stuff was going to take forever. Driving over there would have been difficult to find parking. I would have had to fight all that, and that's fine. Then driving to and from there would have been a whole fiasco, right? That's by USC, downtown LA. It was would it start on Jefferson, and it went all the way down, basically USC way over there. And so it was just going to be a ton of people, right? And so I didn't want to have to deal with all that. So I had this idea, because I had been taking the bus while on vacation, and I had this idea where I am going to take the train. Let's see what the train is about. It'll take me to Union Station. I could take a small Uber ride from Union Station to where the Rams were at, going to have the parade where they were going to stage the area. And I said, well, let me try this. How much could it cost? It's like $10 each way. Very reasonable, right? And here was a cool thing about the train. I ended up taking the train. I parked my car in the secured parking. I was in Orange County. And I took a trip down there, and it was pretty cool because there was no stopping. I got there a lot sooner than I thought. And so there's another trick that I did, right? So I wanted to take an Uber, but everybody's at Union Station hopping on the Uber. And it's a little bit more expensive. So I said, you know what, let me go walk down the street a little bit, maybe about a mile, and then call the Uber. And it was cheaper and it was faster. So there was that, right? So I go take myself down the parade. I walked through Olvera Street, right? Olvera Street. I walked through there, took some pictures. You might see I might have some pop up here of some of that footage, right? So I did all that. And then I got the Uber ride, and it dropped me off literally at the beginning of where the parade route was going to be. Now the parade route was only like a mile long. Wasn't very long. And, you know, there was this thing where you can get into where they were going to be talking at, and you had to have all these testing, and it was just like kind of like it got out of control right away, right? So hopefully you're seeing the picture-in-picture here of the footage that I took from the parade. I still have that footage. I haven't posted anywhere. It's a little bit outdated, but for the purpose of this podcast, I talked about talking about this in the podcast, either one or two. So here it is, right? So anyways, so it was a fun event, right? I walked up and down the whole thing, was kind of pooped out, took a bunch of footage. Of course, I had to buy the obligatory bacon wrapped hot dog, right? You're going to get sick. I did. And, the thing is, you got to do it, right? When I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I used to work in nightclubs in Hollywood, and we would get those bacon wrapped hot dogs all the time. They were $3 at the time. Now they're $7. I know, right? But anyways, so I went and did that. And as the parade started, there was like no vantage point. Like they could have maybe set some bleachers out. They didn't they just blocked off the street. Everybody was there. I didn't really know what to expect. I was just going to go have a good time. And it got crowded fast. Like at first, when I was there, it didn't seem like a lot of people were going to show up. It was during the week. People got to work, And so now there were some people on the train with Rams gear, but I really wasn't in the mood to talk to them. For whatever reason, I just was like going to listen to my headphones. Now, here's the thing about the iPhone is my iPhone is kind of old now, so it doesn't hold all its charge. So you kind of want to conserve. I took some photos and everything with my iPhone, but I want to conserve the power because I'm going to be there pretty much all day, and you got to have the juice, right? And I don't have little power banks that I could connect to. I should have done that, right? But anyways, so I get there, I walk up and down, I have the bacon wrapped hot dog. Everything starts. It's cool because even the fire department, they're standing out, they're on top of the thing. Now there's a couple of city vehicles like end dumps, like trash trucks that they parked there to block the road, and people started getting on top of them, right? And then I ran into just a bunch of people, and it was pretty cool, right? It started getting packed, and then they started coming down the way, and it was just super interesting. It was a fun time, right? Everybody was having a good time. One of the things that I noticed is, LA is LA. LA does what LA wants to do. If it's going to get out of control, it's going to literally just get out of control. That's the thing about it, right? So you don't really have an opportunity to stop it once it kind of smolders and starts. That's kind of what LA does. When it starts, and it's not going nowhere. It's just not going anywhere. And so the police presence, and I'm going to have some pictures here too, it was outrageous. It was a lot of police presence there. I don't think anybody got the day off there. You like calling sick, you're probably getting suspended, right? I even mentioned it to one of the sergeants. I said, nobody gets a day off today, right? And he's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. He was just kind of being coy, but you could see his stripes. He had like all of his, you can see it, right? You know this guy's somebody, right? He's an older gentleman. And I made that comment. He just kind of brushed it off. I was like, okay, I get it, right? He's really not in the mood. They're probably on high alert. They don't want anything to start, right? They don't want people to start fighting because there was drinking going on. It was a lot of people. We're talking thousands and thousands of people. It was kind of a small parade route on purpose, right? And so you go there and they start going by and everybody's just laughing it up, living it up. And I didn't see one fight. Zero out of control. So they've obviously got the memo. Whoever was in charge of having the strategy was like, we're going to have so many police here that nobody's going to even think to get out of control. Now, was it a possibility that there was a fight? Yeah, of course. I didn't see any of it. And I was walking around the whole thing, kind of looking at what was going on. It was a great time. Los Angeles Rams won their Super Bowl in the same year that they hosted the Super Bowl. Right? How much money was made by that city? A lot. Hotels. I mean, you name it, right? It was celebrities galore. The halftime show was amazing. But anyways, the parade was really fun. Nothing happened weird. It's just everybody had a good time. I took some pictures. There was a guy that had a Rams tattoo. It's so funny because I took the picture And his Rams tattoo that he had on his head, he had a Los Angeles Rams tattoo on his head. He was an old school veteran, old school gangster. And I didn't even get a good picture. I got a picture, but it was a horrible picture. So anyways, that was it. Rams Parade was a good time, right? So let me talk about this. Okay, so there's that, right? So the next subject I want to talk about, and so I started recently listening to or watching the George Lopez podcast, right? He has his own podcast, right? So he has all these characters or people that really regular people don't have access to, right? So his celebrity, which is immense, attracts people. So one interview, and this is sports related, that really, really, really took me back was the interview with Oscar De La Hoya, right? So you look at Oscar De La Hoya, and when I was a kid, right, when he won the Olympics in 91, 92, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. I was like 13 years old at the time, 14, I was around that age, teenager, and all this attention. And this is before social media, so when this guy got in the news, it was a big deal because we sat and watched the news, right? And so looking at Oscar De La Hoya, and one thing comes to my mind, right, is that he got a sponsorship deal by a Chevy dealership. It was like, what? Like they're paying this guy, this local guy like us, so to say, right? And so it was so relatable. It was crazy because this guy was super ultra famous. I mean, he was just the man. And because of the fact that there wasn't so, like, entertainment wasn't saturated like it is now. Like, entertainment now, there's just tons and tons of people, opportunities, social media, different platforms, stream this, stream that. So all that was a factor, right? So back in those days, there wasn't. It was a couple of news stations. Yes, cable TV existed, but it wasn't the way it is now. It was not. It just was not. So he was like a bigger than life figure. So to hear him on the George Lopez podcast, he started bringing up like what got him, like he started telling us a story about how as an amateur, he basically didn't lose any fights. The fight that he did lose, he lost to a guy and the guy kicked his butt and it made him learn, right? He grew and everything like that. And he was just such a outrageous character figure. And so to hear him tell his like progression of like, he really wasn't interested in boxing. His father pushed him into boxing and he like basically made him do it, right? And so everybody's like, oh, he shouldn't have to, but that's not the way it was back then. And so he is constantly looking for his father's approval and he tells about his demons and what happened to him. And then, he just goes and tells stories. He probably has 1,000 stories and he only told a couple stories on there, but it was just so interesting seeing. And if you get a chance, watch that. And if you were raised in LA at the time and you're about 40, 45 years old, you'll know what I'm talking about. Oscar De La Hoya was the man before he was the CEO of Golden Boy Entertainment, which he does well now. But he's like a true success story. He's a rags to riches. Everybody was like the American dream guy. He won the gold medal for Pete's sake, right? From East LA and all this other stuff. And so it was just so amazing to hear the legend himself talk. Now, because he has had some controversy and he's had some stuff go on. And so it kind of like, it tarnishes a little bit of his reputation. But for a long time, he was the man. Oscar De La Hoya was like bigger than life for everybody that lived and grew up in LA around that time period. And if you played any kind of sports, you knew who he was. And so I played football. And so you still knew who Oscar De La Hoya was because it was the rags to riches, right? It was like, if he can do it, then anybody else can. That was the kind of cool part of him. And watching this podcast with George Lopez knows him personally. So Oscar De La Hoya got really, really relaxed. And to see him relaxed and not so measured, right? He was really being authentic because I've seen him in interviews before, 100%. I've seen interviews, you see him talk, but the fact is that George kind of got him to relax and you've seen who he really is, which it doesn't stray from what it is. I mean, this guy is an amazing person. What he had to go through, the odds he had to beat. He's very physically talented. He was very talented, but he was emotionally, you could tell that there's a lot of strength there, right? There was a lot of, stubbornness to succeed and he wants to win and be the best. And he loved that moment. You could tell that he loved the limelight, but he also kind of, struggled with it, right? And so not to get into too much details of that, I just really enjoyed watching that podcast. And it was the reason why I think it was so authentic. It was just the effect that George Lopez had on him, right? Because he's another Hispanic person that is in the world of entertainment. So in a way, Oscar De La Hoya, in a kind of a way, because George Lopez was a little bit before him, right? If you want to really think about the whole thing and the sequence of it. So I think that Oscar De La Hoya looks up and respects George Lopez like an elder person, right? Like a old wise man in the Hispanic entertainment business. Because ultimately, prize fighters, boxing prize fighters, and I'll make a whole podcast about boxing prize fighters, right? That there's a lot of entertainment in them. There's a lot of showmanship aside from amazing boxing ability that you have to possess. You have to have the killer instinct. You have to do all these things, and Oscar De La has all that, right? And he talks about it in the podcast. He talks about how he has to get that victory, he has to get that W, and he has to show people, and his fight with Julio Cesar Chavez and that whole issue, right? And, about getting respect in the community. And he just talked about all that. And because of his dealing with George Lopez in the aspect of he wanted to be respectful to his kind of celebrity or history or legend or whatever you want to call it, he really spoke openly. And they joked around a lot. And the jokes were really, you could tell he's told these jokes before. And one of the things about Oscar De La Hoya that you could tell that he was comfortable, which is what I can appreciate, is he was using his little catchphrases that he probably talks to his friends about, right? When he talks to his friends, you have little things that you say. And what that does is that tells you that he's comfortable with George and he's comfortable answering the questions that George is hitting him with. Now, George hit him with some serious questions and they went down these weird paths, but ultimately it was a really authentic interview that really kind of lifted the veil of a legend, especially in Los Angeles, especially in that time. I mean, for probably a good 10 years. When he fought Manny Pacquiao, and he talked about he didn't really want to retire, but he really kind of didn't see it any other way, and he misses it all the time. And it was interesting because you know how boxers, how all these extreme athletes, these Super Bowl champs, all these other people, they say, do you miss it? Do you miss it? He didn't even hesitate to say that he missed it extremely. He misses it every single day, and it looks like it kind of bugs him. It's a really compelling interview, and it really opened your eyes to what makes that man click, right? There's a lot riding on him, right? When you're a part of this machine, whether Golden Boy Entertainment, you're responsible for a lot of people. You got to make sure that you have the ability to keep everything running because a lot of people pay their mortgages with this job that you're employed over there, So sometimes do they go off the rails? Yeah, of course. Of course. Nobody's perfect. The expectation is perfection. 100% is the expectation is perfection. But we know that that's not possible. So how far do you fall off? Well, that's all subject to perception and public opinion, right? And so, when I looked at that, I just was really, it was a real authentic, and I think I've said this already, it's an authentic interview. And the fact that the interview was authentic, it makes it hard for these these celebrities, these mega celebrities, especially in the 90s, right? Like George Lopez was a superstar. Everybody knew who he was because he had a show on TV that had reruns. It still has reruns. People don't really grasp the magnitude of the celebrity back then because of the fact that there wasn't a whole bunch of opportunity for everybody to kind of poke their head in, right? You had a bunch of talented people, but really the only people you saw were like the cream of the crop. The cream of the crop, right? And so that's kind of what I saw with Oscar De La Hoya, right? If you get a chance, go check it out. Just type in, George Lopez podcast, and you'll find all the episodes. He has a lot of good other episodes too. And his co-host is the guy that found the Night Stalker. They helped catch the Night Stalker. So he tells a lot of good stories too. That's his co-host, and they kind of run the show there. But anyways, very, very good interview. Oscar De La Hoya, holy smokes, right? So I would advise checking that out, and you get a rare glimpse into somebody that was, a mega star. And he's fallen off a lot, right? But that's what happens, right? You can't be a celebrity like that forever, like a Floyd Mayweather, like a Cesar Chavez in the boxing world. These guys were amazing personalities and just prize fighting, winners. They had it all. They had a good looks, the whole nine, right? So anyways, so there's that, right? So the last topic that I want to talk about is this. We're going to switch gears a little bit here to the NFL, right? And the combine. If you don't know what the combine is, the NFL combine is where all the new potential draftees are going to basically, they're going to see what they can do according to these standardized drills. So you run the 40-yard dash, and it's the famous, 40-yard dash. And there's guys running 4.3 40s. I mean, ridiculously insane times. But here's the story that I want to get at, and here's the question. Here's the point of me bringing this topic up, right? So there was a gentleman that ran a 4.8 40, 4.8 seconds, which is lightning fast, right? There's faster people, but this guy was an offensive lineman. Now, here's what's interesting. He weighs 375 pounds and ran a 4.8 40. That is ridiculous, or 4.78 40, whatever it is, but it's super fast. Now, this dude's a giant human being, 6'6", 375, strong, runs like a gazelle. So the question that I have, so this segment is, how is this happening? Is this just great genetics? Is this training, genetics? Like, is this a combination of what a human potential could be? Like, this dude is giant. Now, he's got a little fat on him, but not much, right? He's just a giant person. Is that because of the food? Is that because of the training? Is that because of just, genetic? Like, what are we looking at here, right? That didn't exist before, or did it? But from what we know in the records, these are like record-setting, speeds. And one of the other guys, I can't remember his name, but he bench pressed 225 44 times. That's insane amount of strength and stamina. That's stamina, right? And so this person has this perfect combination of strength and stamina. And, these super athletes, could it have always been that way? And where would this guy be? Let's say, for example, this guy had the nutritional know-how, the training, the discipline, and this was in 1950s. He would be literally unstoppable. Now, that wouldn't apply because he would live in the 50s, and they knew about nutrition, but not like it's like dialed in at laser precision at this point, right? That's kind of what happened. That's kind of what's happening with these athletes. And then they run the 40-yard dash, and one of the wide receivers ran a potential 4.12 second. Now, that's Deion Sanders level fast. Deion Sanders was just an exceptional athlete, right? So what makes that, right? It's the body mechanics. It's the proportions, It's like that whole thing with, Usain Bolt, right? He's just tall enough. He's not too tall. He's not too short. He's just tall enough where his level of muscle mass can hit that perfect level of speed and stamina, endurance, and it all fills in, right? Because you can't be too big, because your heart literally can't pump that much oxygen, and you just get tired, you just can't sustain it. And then, or you could be too thin and you just can't generate enough power. And so that's the thing with this guy that's 375. Now, he has obviously trained for this combine because there's millions and tens of millions of dollars at stake. So of course he's going to prepare himself accordingly, right? So there's that whole deal. And so it's like, yeah, he's motivated, right? There's a big paycheck just around the corner. He's a giant person. He's already 6'6", 375. If he didn't run that combine that fast, if he didn't run that 40-yard dash that fast, he might have still got drafted very high, right? This guy's already talented. He knows the game. Yes, he's a rookie, so there'll be a lot for him to learn. But the frame on that dude, the potential. I guess what it is that when you run these when you perform at the combine, you can either help or hurt yourself. I don't think there's any stagnant results. When you look at the combine, you're either going to do better and move up, or you're going to move down. Because here's the thing, other people will move up. Other people, there's going to be a certain percentage of people that the expectation was met, and some. Then at the other end of it, there's going to be people with high expectations, and they're going to disappoint. They're not going to meet the expectations. So there's going to be some winners and some losers in those combines. Now, the fear is that if you had a high ranking and you perform low, You just hurt yourself, right? So if you hurt yourself, then was it a good idea to even perform at the combine? Well, the easier answer is no, but you don't know that, right? It's like a luck of the draw. It's like a throw of the dice. You don't know what's going to happen. You really don't know. So if you want to improve your stock to the point that you're a top 10 pick, now you're getting the big dollars at the beginning. So I think that's the allure of it, right? So this guy that runs 6'6", 6'6", 375 pounds and runs a 4.78 40, did he improve his stock? Absolutely, because that's what everybody remembers. That's what the articles are written about. Now, when you have articles that are written about you, and yeah, other people stand out because other people were mentioned in that article where it talks about the guy that bench presses 225 44 at the rate of 44 reps. Now, that's an important deal too, right? That shows that you're not only just strong, you're not naturally strong, but you've put some really intense thinking into how to get stronger and be at that top level. So yeah, physically you could be gifted, but to bench press 225 44 times, you have to be disciplined and have a good team around you and have people that help you progress and you don't stay stagnant. So there's a whole many factors with that. And so, that's really kind of what's going on in the NFL. Now the Super Bowl's over. The NFL does a really good job of keeping you interested in the NFL by having these NFL combines. They're making TikTok videos, they're making Instagram, Facebook, they're making all these posts, and they're just putting content out, and it's drowning out everybody else. And the guy that's 6'6", 375 pounds and runs a 4.78 40, that is an interesting story because that's a freak of nature, but it's really not. He's not a freak of nature. It's a result of his physical ability plus a good team, plus nutrition, plus a good workout regimen, right? And here's another thing too. A lot of it is luck. And I'm going to tell you why it's luck. Is because he's probably gone a couple years injury-free. Now, the reason why I say that's luck is that injuries can happen to everybody, and it's not overtly predictable. Now, you can mitigate your chances, but there's a lot of luck right there. The fact that this guy made it this far, injury-free, because he's a big person, right? The chance of getting injured in an NFL football game, a college football game, is high. Everybody gets hurt. You're ramming each other's bodies against each other. There's no other way around it. So that being said, if you say that there's no luck involved in this guy's ability, you're wrong. Now, is it all luck? No, but there's a certain amount of everything kind of fell into place and he remained injury-free, or the injuries were minimized where he could still progress to the point where he's running, a 4.78 40-yard dash at 375 pounds. That takes a lot of lucky breaks to be injury-free for a long period of time. So when you look at that, there's a lot of depth to how this person got to this point where they can perform at that level. That's the top, right? And that's why we're talking about it, because this guy was able to get there. Now his value has to have gone up, because if you've never ran that before, now you did. Now you showed everybody you can. So now people see that he has realized some of his potential. The question is, and I'm going to end it with this. The question is that the extent of his potential? How much more potential does he have in him? Right? So that's kind of what the catch-22 is. Has this guy peaked? Has he peaked? Is he at the top of his physical ability? Is this guy going to not get stronger, or is he only going to get 5 or 6% stronger? So I'm going to end it with that, because if you found a guy that you could pay less, but he has double the potential, who's worth it? Who's more worth it? Good question, right? And that's for people to evaluate and figure out. So that all being said, thanks for listening. This is the Reuben Show, episode number 3, and we went heavy on the sports, But I'm going to make another episode. It's going to be episode number 4. We're going to get back to some other stuff that's interesting to me. And if you watch this whole thing, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Or don't, or do. If you would, I appreciate it.